And with China set to ban the entry of all foreigners from midnight, our CNA cameraman in Shanghai tells us what it's like to be a Singaporean who managed to beat the deadline.
I'm Emil Wan, CNA's cameraman based in Shanghai. I returned to Shanghai from Singapore on March 22nd with my wife and son, and we are still in the midst of self-isolation.
Today, Emil and his family relies on online shopping a lot more, but they are not under a strict quarantine and are able to leave the residential compound. That's because they arrived in Shanghai before the government announced a mandatory 14-day quarantine for all arrivals.
Each residential compound has its own rules. In my compound, we get an exit slip with the date. With this slip, only residents can come in and out. I can linger outside for a day, but I will try not to leave my compound at the moment. I'm not worried, because everybody here is wearing a mask, and they are quite conscious of hygiene.
Emil and his family had returned to Singapore to weather the worst of the virus outbreak in China, and they only returned to Shanghai earlier this week due to an improving situation. The number of new daily cases in the country has dropped drastically, and in recent days, all the new patients were travelers who came to China from overseas.
Upon landing, we were pleasantly surprised by how orderly the processes were. One could only disembark when your name is called. People were directed to booths set up for individual health screening. It was only after that one could proceed to immigration and baggage claim. All in, it took me 3 hours to leave the airport after touching down.
But the situation is fast changing. To deal with the influx of imported infections, soon after Emil returned to Shanghai, the city announced that all arrivals will have to be subject to COVID-19 tests. And on Thursday, China announced that it will temporarily bar entry of foreigners with valid visas and residence permits to stop the spread of the coronavirus. It also announced that foreign airlines will be allowed to operate only one route per week into the country from Sunday. But within the country, curbs are gradually lifted as life begins to return to normal, though many schools remain closed.
会有点担心，因为疫情的关系，学校从农历新年到现在已经过了2个月还没开学。虽然这段时间学校有安排线上的课程，让学生在家里面学习，但是我还是有点担心，以现在的学习状态，无法应付5、6月的 IGCSE 考试，这个就等于是新加坡欧水准的考试，所以我希望这个疫情可以快点的结束。
But even though the epidemic has eased, there are individuals who continue to stay indoors simply because there is little to do outside. Singaporean Alicia Xia, who is based in Beijing, has not left the city for the last 2 months.
We have been staying at home all this while, not because we are afraid to go out or because we prefer to stay home, but simply because the shops have all been closed. Other than the supermarket and the pharmacies, everything else is closed. You're not allowed to go in. It's not operating.
The pandemic has affected all sectors of the economy in China, and the authorities have promised loans, aids and subsidies to help businesses. But their biggest challenge now is to revive the economy while keeping its people safe.